Hello, you're welcome to the only show that brings you happenings from the diplomatic community in Ghana, Africa, and the rest of the world. My name is Harriet, and the show airs every Saturday between the hours of 4 to 5 o'clock p.m. on Pan-African television, and of course with a global audience via social media, YouTube and Facebook, and in some parts of Europe as well. Today we are coming to you all the way from Vienna, Austria. It is my first time, but it feels like home because I have been well received and I don't miss home at all. Well, we have a job whenever we come to your screens, that is to bring you insights and of course to share with you what is happening when it comes to Ghana's relations with other countries. Of course, Ghana Mission in Vienna is very young, barely 2 years old, and so we decided to come here, engage the head of mission, and of course speak to him and learn how relative or how relevant, let me put it, the significance of having an embassy, Ghana embassy here in Austria, Vienna. How is that going to impact or translate into the lives of the Ghanaian people? My guest is no other than the head of the mission here in Vienna, Ghana Mission here in Vienna, and of course he has over 30 years of experience in diplomacy, and he has, served in various capacities, and I am so curious to learn about his diplomatic journey. And of course, let's focus on today's interview. Your Excellency, welcome to Diplomatic Affairs.
Thank you so much.
How is Vienna?
Vienna is doing well, and we are striving hard to enhance relations between Ghana and Austria.
I'm happy to hear that we are expanding our wings and we are trying to explore all avenues regarding opportunities for the good people of the country. Now, before we go into business, I'd like my viewers to be able to know you better. Let's talk about who you are, your diplomatic journey, and the various offices that you have served in.
I have a longer name, which is Philbert Abeka Johnson, but many people know me as Philbert Johnson for short, and that makes me look like a European, but I'm a typical Ghanaian. Yeah, I went to school in Accra and then Kumasi. I'm talking about primary school. And then later, secondary school in Accra, Aquinas Secondary School to be precise, proceeded to the University of Cape Coast, and then to University of Ghana, and had some education in Switzerland, Bern, where I studied trade law and economics. But to talk about my career journey, I started first work in Liberia, working at the erstwhile office of the chairman of ECOWAS in an effort to deal with the crisis in Liberia then, in 1995 to 1996, and then proceeded to the foreign ministry, where I have been opportune to serve in several missions, in our mission in Switzerland, our mission in Moscow, our mission in New York, and our mission in Canada, and now in Austria.
Here you are, in Vienna, Austria. I remember very well when we met at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, where you were then in charge of the Africa Bureau. And ever since, I've been looking for the opportunity to speak with you, to explore happenings in that particular area. But prior to that, you've also served in the Europe Bureau. Can I say that you bring the experience that you've had, especially from the Europe Bureau back home at the Foreign Affairs Ministry, to this particular assignment, this job?
Absolutely. If you look at my journey in the diplomatic sphere, I served mostly in mostly in Europe, mostly in Europe. I served, as I told you, in Moscow, Brussels, Switzerland, and now in Austria. And Haven't also served as the director of the Europe Bureau. These are all the experiences that I carry along in my journey to Vienna.
Interesting. Then let me ask you, how relevant is Ghana's presence in Austria, Vienna, when it comes to diplomatic relations between the two countries?
I think presence here is of utmost relevance, and we should have been here long ago. If you look at our history, you would realize that we've had diplomatic relations with Austria since 1964. But even before 1964, businesses have had engagement, Austrian businesses have had engagement with Ghana. You cannot effectively talk about Akosombo without talking about Harriet, an Austrian company which up to date has engagements with Akosombo.
You're talking about our own Akosombo Dam back home.
Yeah, you cannot talk about, and even when you talk about the development of, construction of silos in Ghana, during those early years by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, you cannot talk about those construction of silos without talking about Austrian companies, names like Da Vinci, those who helped in constructing those silos. You cannot ignore Austria's impact during that time without talking, in fact, when you're talking about the politics around cocoa at the time. And since then, we have had several Austrian companies working with Ghana. And Austria has been of tremendous assistance in the social sphere in Ghana. The construction of hospitals, construction of technical and vocational institutes, bridges, roads, and so on.
I remember in our earlier conversation, you also mentioned the Adome Bridge.
Yes, it's the Austrians who, as it were, refurbished the Adome Bridge, when it became so weak to perform the task for which it was constructed for,
I very much agree with you when you said we should have been here long ago, but it at least better late than never, as they say. Let's talk about, for me, I think this is quite important because the diplomatic relations on the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations was ratified here in Vienna, Austria, and so I find it more intriguing given the fact that we've just set up that kind of relationship by enhancing our relations with Austria. We decided to put up an office right here in Austria. Someone would argue, but Austria is very far from home in terms of proximity. Why is this so important? How does that translate into the lives of the people back home?
I have mentioned to you one of the biggest challenges that we have in Ghana is youth unemployment.
Right.
And as I told you, Austria has been very much involved in giving us facilities to train the youth with skills, technical, what in educational parlance you call psychomotor skills, for them to be able to establish their own companies, to do things with their hands, and not to wait for people to employ them. And so that's a critical area that I think Austria is doing well with us. And social amenities, as I've indicated also, they have been involved in building hospitals, roads, and so on for Ghana through companies in Austria, And Austria, not only the bilateral issues are relevant, but there is a multilateral segment of our activities here. You have UN agencies here, the UN, UNODC, you have UNIDO, you have IEA, you have UNCTRA, you have CTBTO, and others, UNOSA and others here. And we need to be part of the deliberations here in order to define form and norm and the forming and norming of international regimes that govern these different spheres of multilateral activity. And since we've been here, we've seen some deepened engagement in these spheres, focusing on Ghana's interests as well. And so our presence here is of importance, not only in the bilateral sphere, but also in the multilateral setting. Yeah.
One of the key areas that you are focusing on or exchanging knowledge or expertise in when it comes to relations between Ghana and Austria would be the TVET and COVET. So you talked about the technical knowledge. You talked about how important this would be in the lives of the youth back home, creating jobs for them. Have we started anything in that area yet, or conversations are still ongoing?
We've started so much. The Austrians for a couple of years, about a decade, have been involved in building institutions, technical and vocational institutions, to the level that is capable of training our youth in that field. Not only in carpentry, in auto mechanics, and all other areas that are of relevance for our youth in many regions in Ghana. And they are on course getting that done for us. Okay. And so it's ongoing.
Right.
In Accra Eastern region, Volta region, etc. They are doing that. In terms of even ensuring that we get potable water, there's so much activities being undertaken by Austrians in Ghana. Just a couple of months ago, community water development projects were completed at Adidome.
Adidome?
Yeah, in the Volta
region.
Yeah, in the Volta region. And currently, the Austrian company, which is more or less, how do you call it, European company, but with roots in Austria, is seeking to improve the water system in the Western region. Yeah, and so Strabag is working in the Western region to ensure that that region also gets potable water for people living there. And so these are a few examples of what Austrians are doing back in Ghana.
Which other sectors are we working in together?
For example, industry is very critical for Africa, the whole of Africa, and for Ghana. We cannot sustain our development without being able to industrialize our economy. And this is what is very important, and the Ministry of Trade and Industry has taken this matter up seriously. Now, within the wings of the AFCFTA, we wouldn't be able to trade effectively if we cannot add value to our produce.
Right.
For example, agric produce. We have to add value to it, keep them on the shelf for a very longer time. And what we are trying to do is to see how best the IEA, which has some techniques and applications.
The IEA is the
Atomic Energy Commission.
Okay.
Atomic Energy Agency here, International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna.
Okay.
To add value, shelf life to our produce, and also to help us to be able to produce high resistant and high yielding, how do you call it, crops, varieties for our country. As you know, Austria is an industrialized country, and they have little machinery that could help us process our produce as well. And we've been engaged with companies that fabricate machinery to look towards Ghana, so that they would be able to have partnership with companies in Ghana so that they start fabricating little machineries for juicing, making of purees, and so on, canning, and so on and so forth. And we've had much support from the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Two very high-profile personalities of the ministry have visited Vienna, and we've gone round to companies to see how best we can begin some kind of economic activity in that
area. Now, let's talk about, this is very broad. I know somebody watching would ask, but Ghana has, this is not the first time Ghana is embarking on an exchange program in this particular area when we talk about agriculture. Ghana has so many exchanges regarding agriculture with other countries, asking them to bring the expertise for us to expand the agric sector, and also create the awareness to have more people undertake agriculture as a profession and do something in that area. That hasn't really yielded so much results in terms of what is happening back home. We are talking about food insecurity. How different is this partnership going to be in that particular area?
Yeah, the difference is that we are not looking for Austrian companies to sell machinery to Ghanaian companies. We are looking for companies that would enter into partnership with Ghanaian companies to fabricate machinery, little machinery. Once you are able to fabricate those machines at home, certainly, as you know, the costs will be less. Again, we'll be able to disseminate technology amongst our people. You know, when you go to Swami, people are trying their hands on making little equipment here and there. But the technology is not at the level that it ought to be. And so bringing those companies together, you know, and establishing some venture that leads to the fabrication of little equipments and machinery, we will be able to move on. The other thing we did last year is to also bring in Austrian companies that are involved in manufacturing of tractors and agric implements, you know, to Ghana. And we're able to get a company known as an Austrian company, which fabricates, how do you call it, tractors, to go to Ghana. First, they donated items to WASI at the University of Ghana, so that they would use those implements, the tractor and implements, to cultivate the university trial farms for improved seed variety, and then subsequently had engagement with the Ministry of Food and Agriculture on how they'll be able to assemble tractors in Ghana. This is an area that we should develop in an integrated and comprehensive fashion. Why Austria? Austria is a small country, they say, but highly industrialized. And the nature of their industry is small, medium enterprises. They are family businesses that have lived and thrived for a considerable length of time. And so looking at our type of industries at home, they are also small, medium enterprises. And so it is our considered opinion that bringing those two small, medium enterprises together from different parts of the world, we would be able to make some progress.
That's great. Now, let's talk about that's heavyweight in terms of relations between our two countries. Like you mentioned, industrialization is key to the development of every country. And I mean, from what I see since I got in, it's so obvious that Austria is well industrialized and there is so much we can learn from them. let me ask, beyond industrialization, you also talked about adding value to our produce. I like the fact that you do not just talk with Ghana in mind. You move to the African Continental Free Trade Area. And so I'm looking at the opportunities beyond just industrialization, which is very important. Can we talk about some of the intangibles, who we are? Can we sell who we are, our identity, culture, arts, food? What's happening in that area? These are intangibles, somebody would say, you know, but these are something that when we concentrate or focus on can yield so much results.
Yeah, certainly so. If you look around the mission, you would see a lot of paintings.
Right, I did. Are you just an art lover or that's strategic?
No, absolutely, they're strategic. This is a cultural city in Europe, and you would see a lot of museums, a lot of activities in that area, in this city, Vienna. And we felt that we could organize some exhibition to mark 66th independence anniversary. So on the 22nd of February, we started exhibiting some African paintings and objects here. And the whole idea is to bring in the public, businesses in Austria, so that we could network and explore opportunities for mutually rewarding engagement between the two sides. And so, fortunately, we had over 200 people visiting the mission. And
that was the first of its kind.
That's the first of its kind. And we did not only limit it to Ghana. We expanded the focus to Africa because of AFCFTA as well. And to leverage on that agreement and that opportunity to project Ghana as a destination where one could do business. And I must say that we've had some interesting inquiries about Ghana by some businesses in Austria and even beyond in Europe. Some came from other parts of Europe to witness this exhibition. And so these are little things that we are trying to do to bring awareness to Ghana, what opportunities we have to offer and what others could tap into.
Arts and culture is a very good area if you know what to do with it. What I mean is if you have people paying attention to that particular area, you would get so many people who might express interest in doing business in that area. You talked about the museum, and I see this book here. Can we explore further the issue of museum, because these are like very interesting.
In fact, we have found out so many interesting things since we came, and they were not in our briefs when we were coming. We have even discovered a book written by Peter Altenberg on Ashanti, which I would try, entitled Afrika und Wien und 1900. And in that book, which is entitled Ashanti, you would realize that as far back as in 1897, the Austrians have brought in a number of Ghanaians, I mean people who are of Ghanaian origin, to Austria, for the Austrians to observe how they lived, how their culture, how they interacted with one another. And even though the book is entitled Ashanti, it's interesting to note that you have mostly Gans who were brought here. You have names like Tioko, Ashia, Norte, Suate, Ayoko, and so on. And you have Miss Mobone written in it, things like Ekomenyo, Ete, and so on.
How then is the title, is it focused on Ashanti? Like that's the book, that's very interesting.
I presume that they assumed at that time that Ashanti being a big empire in, a big kingdom in Ghana, everyone belonged to that kingdom. Perhaps that was the presumption. But we think that we have to explore that matter a bit further to find out when they were brought actually, how they were sent back, the purpose for which, and leverage around that historical event to bring the people of this country and Ghanaians together, maybe form an activity annually around it, you know. Now you spoke about Museum Lionic, which I discovered a year ago in one of the provinces of Austria. And it would amaze you to find some of the priceless heritage objects of the Ashanti Kingdom in that museum. Very priceless objects. And, you know, since we started this art exhibitions and so on, the Austrian Foreign Ministry has found some interest in what we are doing. And they've even decided to team up with us to organize the Africa Day in May. And at that event, a new project...
Starting this May.
Starting this May. At that event, a new project which would be known as Africa Interactive would be launched by Professor Leiber. And in that project, they seek to preserve our heritage in terms of heritage objects, in terms of our stories, our culture, on the internet for the youth, wherever they may be, whether they are in Austria, whether they are in Europe, whether they are in the Americas, African youth, so that they would know our culture and they will be able to relate with it so easily on the internet.
H.E, it appears Austria has been fascinated by our culture for a very long time. We are just discovering that they've always had that kind of interest in who we are as a people, our culture, and all of that. Are we looking at, you mentioned a few programs that are about to be introduced in the celebration of the Ghanaian culture right here in Austria. Are we looking at also going further to have other aspects of our culture factored into these events when they happen right here in Vienna?
Honestly, when they happen right here in Vienna at the VIC, that's the UN, we intend to have a heavy dose of Ghanaian culture during the dancing and drumming, not only dancing and drumming, but also have some products from Ghana on display. One thing that I think we have to monetize, our fabric, our beads, our earrings, and so on, we can monetize them highly in Austria. And so the mission is planning to have a couple of these things that you adorn your body with here during the Africa Day celebration. And we are encouraging other missions to also organize cultural events, exhibitions, where we can also contribute a little to show more of what Ghana has to offer in this area.
We cannot talk about arts and culture without talking about tourism. I mean, we have so much to offer as a country, and I'm talking about Ghana. We have a lot of potential when it comes to tourism. How can we also zoom in and leverage this to sell what we have when it comes to tourism in Ghana?
Certainly, we have a lot of tourist destinations, fascinating places in Ghana. One thing that we are doing is to ensure that we have a higher dose of training in TVET and COVET on tourism. You know, there's the Austrians do very well in tourism here.
Right.
And they have different medical tourism, different forms of tourism in Austria. And it's something that they train people very early on in their education. They have so many institutions here, and we are trying to link them up. What we have to do, which we are yet to do, is to bring together those who can partner with our people to develop those sites, to even have not the highly prized facilities that we have in Ghana, but decent accommodation in very simple places where we can promote for people to visit and enjoy, And so this is an area that I believe we have to work on seriously as we move forward. And I think this mission would have to work assiduously in that area too.
Talking of working assiduously, I am here on the tickets of the Renaissance of Culture Ghana event, which took place a few days ago, I think over the weekend. And this was successful because they partnered the mission, and you also owned this particular project by inviting people to come and ensuring that all was well laid out for the event to be successful. Let's talk about the impact of this event. I saw you that night. You were very excited to have introduced this. It's the maiden one. I've been following them all over the world, and this is the first one in Austria, Vienna here. Let's talk about how important this is to you as someone who has to do everything to bring awareness to Ghana.
I think this activity was the first to have happened here, and I thank the organizers for organizing it. Since we had this event on Saturday, some companies have already approached us this morning for collaboration with you later in the year to organize so that there will be a wider audience to have an experience of Ghanaian culture in that respect, dance, music, and so on and so forth. And in Austria, they have so much orchestra, they have music events, festival events, and so on and so forth. And it's, in my view, what you did on Saturday is one of the things we could do to bring about awareness to our part of the world, and also to advertise what we have for people to visit our country to enjoy.
I'm happy to hear that this will be happening almost every now and then, as we want to use that as an opportunity to put out the Ghanaian culture out there and also sell, monetize it, like you said. So this is great, and of course, let me commend you for your support. And I had the opportunity to speak with a few people from the Ghanaian community right here in Austria, and they really commended your effort in taking up this initiative and contributing so well to making it possible, and not just possible but also successful. So it didn't just happen, but it is beginning to at least yield some results, and that is the message we are excited about. Now, before we go, I would want us to talk about the role of Ghana missions abroad in Ghana's economic recovery. What can we do to help the government back home?
There are a few little things that we have to do. First, I think our home ministries must acknowledge the fact that the foreign ministry is an integral part of the work in ensuring our recovery. And having said that, I want to emphasize on coordination. We have to coordinate our activities very well. It shouldn't be business as usual.
Right.
What the Ministry of Trade is doing, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs should know about it, and the Foreign Ministry, the missions abroad should know about it. We should craft a strategy, a careful strategy, which we would follow. And for particular regions, for example, in Europe, we should have some focus. This is what Europe missions would have to deliver in ensuring recovery. And then we move on. We should have a system of assessment, a system of supervision, a system to monitor what we do. And we should be reporting to each other every time. And so I think it should not be business as usual. And these are my personal views. It should not be business as usual. We should do things differently. We should do things with some precision. I would even dare to say surgical precision, so that we make good results, get good results from our actions. And we should plan. And we should plan within the context of a very difficult situation that we find ourselves, and with a passion and commitment to change the story. And for us here, we think education in technical and vocational is one of the ways. We think that tourism could also help. We think that industrialization would help. But you know, these things don't happen overnight. They take time, and so gradually making little steps a day at a time, I believe we would get there.
Well, thank you very much. Final word from you. What is the message for the people back home?
I think that we should not, the young people, they are those that are very dear to me. We should not be shy of making our hands dirty. Working on the farm, rearing some animals, trying to package them well to sell, doing some ICT work, and looking beyond your immediate environment. And I also believe that it is in challenging times that we can make some of the best in our lives, best successes in our lives. And so we should not look at the challenges that we've all been confronted with in a gloomy way, but we should look beyond those challenges, and we should explore ways and avenues to get out of this much more successful.
How busy is this place on a daily basis?
It's very, we have, as I told you, we are not doing only bilateral work. We are doing multilateral work. And as I speak now, UNOSA is having a session, CTBTO is having a session, IE is having a session, and so all the officers would have to focus on that and also focus on their bilateral remit as well. It's a very busy mission. We have limited resources, but we're trying the best we can.
Yeah, and also serving the people of Ghana, their passports.
Absolutely.
I've heard really great
Absolutely.
comments on the job you're doing here.
Absolutely. We try to do the best we can. There are times that we are confronted with situations which are very hard. People who cannot take care of themselves, Ghanaians who have stayed here for a long time, they are incapacitated, but they would want to go home. The consular services are delivered at their doorsteps. They go as far as to grass, lanes to help them, even very young people in hospitals and so on. When they are in trouble, we take it upon ourselves to engage the authorities to see how best their interests will be served. And so we've been trying our best, but I believe we can do more too.
Thank you so much for your time on
It's a
Diplomatic
pleasure.
Affairs. I believe we can do more too. And of course, Your Excellency here is one of the most visible ambassadors. And of course, I don't have to say this. I mean, I was able to speak with the people and they, you know, testified. They told me that, listen, this man, call him any time of the day. He is ready to show up and he's there for us. And so that's the kind of leaders we want when you are sent abroad to work on behalf of the country and the good people of the country. And so we want to see more of you, we want to feel more of you, we want to see you engaging with us. And of course, the ambassadors have a role to play when it comes to the development of our dear nation. My name is Harriet Nate. My guest has been Ambassador Philbert Abeka Johnson, and he is representing Ghana in Vienna, Austria. I'll see you same time next week. Enjoy the rest of our programs.